Nigeria seeks to deepen penetration in its multi-trillion naira pension market, the need for innovation, value addition, and dynamism is vital to ensuring that it attracts more contributions across the nation. Good morning, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Islamic Finance Weekly, where we capture the activities in the non-interest finance market. This episode will discuss assessing Sharia pension fund and issues facing RSA holders in Nigeria. To discuss this with me, I have Mrs. Abimbola Sulaiman, Head Investment Management, ARM Pension Managers Limited. Good morning, Mrs. Abimbola. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me acknowledge the fact that the Islamic finance industry in Nigeria continues to grow with increased interest for market participants and a growing number of players. Give us an overview of Sharia pension. What does this mean to individuals investing in the life pension plan? Does this apply to holy Muslims?
Yeah, you're right that non-interest fund is recently introduced in the retail pension scheme. You know, if you are aware, we started the multi-fund regime in 2018, where people were allowed to select which specific retail fund they wanted to subscribe to. Last year, Fund 5, a micro pension fund, was introduced, and this year, 2021, RSA Fund 6, which is a non-interest pension fund, and it's value-based investing. So it's not really a Muslim thing. It's based on the principles of Islamic finance, but anybody who identifies with those kind of investing principles, which is you don't want to be investing in interest-bearing products or sectors such as gambling or pornography or alcohol. So whoever's values align with those investing principles is free to opt to be in the RSA Fund 6, which is the non-interest fund.
All right, thank you very much. But the National Pension Commission, PENCOM, has introduced a non-interest fund 6 and issued an operational framework on it to pension contributors and retirees, as you said. So as a pension manager, how do you see this development?
No, it's an excellent development. Firstly, because, you know, this pension scheme we're in, it's a compulsory pension scheme. So in the past, if you were someone who felt very strongly that you didn't want to invest in interest-bearing products, you had no option, you know, so long as you were working in the formal sector in Nigeria. The pension scheme was compulsory and there was no option provided to cater to people's values. So as the scheme has evolved, the National Pension Commission has been very deliberate to ensure that as products are being rolled out, we are making sure that we are providing the products not only that align with, you know, the risk profile and risk tolerance of the investing public, but also their values and philosophies and their personal commitments, for instance, to religion or to value-based investment structure. So this allows for people who are already in the scheme, who did not have the opportunity to opt out, to now remain in the scheme while making sure that their investments align with their fundamental values or, you know, their religious values, whatever it may be for each individual. So I think it's an excellent development. The pension scheme has been around since 2004, and we continue to grow and evolve to make sure that we are staying on top of clients' needs, as well as on top of global developments in the financial markets.
All right, yeah, it is an excellent development from the PENCOM industry because the funds will boost investment in the non-interest market and deepen financial inclusion. So let's look at the pension investments. Why are many Nigerian pensioners denied access to their pensions?
That's a great point. You know, if you think about what led to the pension reform and the Pension Reform Act of 2004, which is later amended in 2014. In the past, you know, pension was largely defined benefits and was largely unfunded. So you work for an institution or for government and there is an understanding that you get a pension, but it's not really that money was never really set aside or ring-fenced and protected. The Pension Reform Act really came to address those problems and to solve those problems. What you will see is that pensioners who are in the contributory pension scheme that is managed by PFAs, it's very difficult for you to hear that, oh, it's difficult for them to access their pensions. This scheme has been very well thought out and supported by regulation, and also by an active regulator. So today, if you are working and you retire, the process to access your pensions within the contributory pension scheme is very straightforward. When you hear of fraud in pension systems or retirees waiting for years to access their pensions, and if you dig deep and you dig further, those are not pensioners that are in the contributory pension scheme. The assets in the contributory pension scheme are managed by PFAs. They are set aside, held by pension fund custodians. It's a very watertight and secure system. The steps you need to take to access your contributions upon retirement are very clear and they're quite straightforward. You have the option to stay with your PFA and do a program withdrawal, or to transfer to an insurance provider via an annuity. All of these steps are very seamless. And if you speak with retirees who are in the contributory pension scheme, the feedback you will get will be very different from those who continue to remain in, pension schemes that were pre-PRA 2014 or that are completely different in setup. So, for example, defined benefit schemes that are run by private, some government entities, for example. So as more and more employees come into the contributory pension scheme, it is our hope and our belief that the problem of retirees having difficulty accessing their pension will be a thing of the past. This scheme has really come to solve that problem. And when you see that problem still occurring, it's not occurring within the new scheme that we operate.
Recently, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, said pension fraud is about 157 billion naira. How can this issue be addressed in order to guarantee transparency, accountability to pensioners in the country, and responsive to the needs of the vulnerable sectors?
So the vast majority, in fact, I would say all of that pension fraud that the EFCC addressed are frauds that are perpetuated outside of the contributory pension scheme. So it's our belief, like I said earlier, that for these things to be a thing of the past, it's to have more and more 100% coverage of employees, both in public sector and private sector, having their pension managed within the contributory pension scheme under the regulations of PRA 2014. This scheme is tested and highly protected. So the more you can get both as public and private sector into the scheme, the better for all of us, because this is a more protected scheme. And all of the fraud that have been covered or uncovered by the EFCC have not been from the contributory pension scheme, but rather legacy pension programs that predated PRA 2004. So the solution is right in front of us, is to make sure that as much as possible, the working public are captured in the net of PRA 2014.
I've also heard that collaboration between PENCOM and EFCC will tackle corruption in the administration of pension fund in the country.
I think what they're speaking to is what I've just said, which is, PENCOM is the national regulator that was created by PRA 2014 to regulate, PRA 2004, to regulate the contributory pension scheme. So to the extent that PENCOM has oversight of this scheme, they can work with any sister regulators or partner with other agencies to ensure that this scheme is running seamlessly and as it was intended. There is not a lot that PENCOM can do about pension schemes that are not under the coverage of PENCOM or that are not under the remit or mandate of PENCOM. What PENCOM can do is to make sure that its supervision of the scheme that it's under its own coverage is watertight. Credit to PENCOM for the work that has been done.
Okay, this is where we need regulations and the guidelines for the investment fund. So, all right, before I let you go, so you are the head of investment for ARM pensions. So, what possible investments should we expect to see in the pensions industry, and what is your prediction for 2022?
So, maybe I will speak to the new non-interest fund and then to industry in general. So, the non-interest fund should lead to expansion of instruments in the Islamic finance space and expansion of investable assets and opportunities that are Sharia compliant. As this fund grows, I think you will see in the past in Nigeria, as largely issuer of FG Sukuk has been the federal government. We've had one subnational, which is a state government that has issued a Sukuk, but we would expect growth in this asset class, just as there is growth in investors who are opting to choose RSA Fund 6. That segment of the market should really start to get a boost. And so we will be looking at opportunities in Sukuk, in other Halal sort of income type structures. Outside of that, one really topical area is the area of real assets, so real estate and infrastructure. If you look at the pension scheme today, a lot of our assets are still invested in FGN instruments, so bonds and treasury bills. Gradually, you should see a shift away from that, because what we want is for pension assets to be contributing to the development of the real sector in the country. But also, we have bearing in mind that the primary investment goal, for pension savers is to ensure that they are preserving their purchasing power. That means that your investment returns should exceed inflation. And of course, the best way to do that is to be investing in assets that can give you a real return and, higher return and inflation protection. So areas where we still see gaps in our investment universe are in those real segments where our allocation is still low and would expect those to grow. So infrastructure financing, infrastructure debt and equity, as well as real estate, and maybe some private equity as well. And looking into 2022, we are quite optimistic about these areas that I've highlighted, and that's where we'll be doing quite a lot of work. Of course, the federal government instruments, debt and equity, as well as corporate fixed income issuers still remain a substantial part of, our asset pool, and that's not likely to change materially, over 1 year. I think that the changes I've described are medium-term changes that you'll expect to see over the next 2 to 3 years.
All right, thank you for highlighting the possible investment. As you've mentioned, the pension industry should allow the RSA holders to invest in the real estate investment and other possible investment to see in the 2022.
Yeah, I want to highlight that the regulation already allows us to do that. I was just saying that this is an area that we need to do more of. So the regulation is in place. What we need to do is really growing that segment.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Abimbola, for talking to us this morning. It was nice having this interactive session with you. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you. A pleasure to be here. All the best to you.
According to the Director General of the National Pension Commission, Mrs. Akinyele-Yisau, she said the creation of Sharia Fund, also called the Fund 6 under the Contributory Pension Scheme, will assist in expanding the coverage of the scheme in Nigeria. Despite the fact that the pension industry remains one of the best reformed segments of the financial market, the need for it to be inclusive and accommodative of employees who have reservation about investment in non-Sharia compliant instruments has become imperative. This is why the Contributing Pension Fund 6 should go a long way in wooing more Sharia compliant workers and investors into the market. And that brings us to the end of this week's edition. Many thanks for watching. See you next week Friday for another episode.